I'm Debbie Matson, and this is my audience. Are you okay with pieces of our history being erased and replaced by a sterile, new, clean structure with an empty past? Historic buildings should be preserved, protected, and used rather than being demolished and replaced by something new. I'm studying both historic preservation and design here at Ball State, and I've done some qualitative and quantitative research. Preservation and community are wrapped together, so you and anyone who lives or works anywhere in the built environment around you, you're interacting with that. That community, meaning you, is the driving force to the efforts behind preservation. Historic buildings should be preserved for three reasons. They create a sense of community and character and identity. They are also more sustainable in two different ways, and they bring economic development. The first reason is that preservation grows community and builds and protects character. Jeremy Wells says that a landscape is a kind of book that can be read. This means that as you look around to the places around you, you can read the history of all of the land and the people that have lived there. You can see the story and all of the things that have been part of it, such as the old and new combinations, ethnic and cultural influences, and scars and disasters. An example of identity is downtown Marietta in Georgia, which is about an hour north of Atlanta. It's a community that's built out of local businesses and historic buildings where they are owned by small owners that really care for the people and then care for the businesses that they have. Washington Trust for Preservation says that the past ties people together. It's a common purpose that brings people together to interact for a common cause because they all want to preserve the buildings. One neighbor can affect the other neighbor, so if everyone can preserve them together and have beautiful buildings, it creates a beautiful place altogether. In an article called Rethinking Historic Preservation by Frisch and Severston, people, usually the creative class or young professionals who prefer fields such as design and art and photography or entrepreneurs, prefer places with a unique character, which is typically a historic building and not a clean white structure or a concrete structure or something that's just been built right there. The second reason is twofold. There's two types of sustainability. There's cultural sustainability and there's environmental sustainability. Cultural sustainability, if you haven't heard about it, is the preservation of the character and the past of a place through the continuum of the built environment and its uses. This means that as people progress through life and they look back on the generations behind them, that you can see the evidence of the people behind you through the environment that you're around. Rincon and Remy wrote a chapter of a book called Preservation of Cultural and Historic Heritage as a Tool for Sustainable Development. It's important to love a place and for its use and for what it is. And if people love for it, then they're going to take more care of it than if it's something that they just purchased. The second way that it can be is environmental sustainability. This is a toy store in Los Angeles, but it has been turned into loft apartments. So every material in every building and in the world around us has a life cycle. This life cycle starts from harvest or manufacturing, and then it has a use, and then it goes to either death or recycling. A building such as this could have been demolished and its life cycle would have ended. It would have just gone into the waste, or maybe some of the materials could have been recycled. But instead, it was just refurbished and rehabilitated and used for another use, reducing the materials that it was and prolonging its use and its lifespan. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, it can take up to 80 years for the negative impact of the construction of an energy-efficient building to be balanced by the energy that it saves. Even though you could demolish this and build a new building in its place that could be LEED certified and energy efficient, it takes a lot of energy and has environmental impacts that are negative by getting new materials and constructing something with transportation and just the act of building it at the time. So with any existing building, the rehabilitation is going to be a lot lower than the cost of building a new one. And then the third way is economic development, and this happens in three ways. The first one is tourism. This is Mackinac Island in Michigan. It's known for its tourism, and that's really the only way that it stays going. In A study done by the U.S. Cultural and Heritage Tourism Marketing Council, they did a survey of the income of economy. So $192 billion are put into the economy by tourists visiting historic sites and towns every year. This is a huge impact to our economy across the country. So places like this, Mackinac Island, and many other places that include downtowns and historic sites count on the authenticity of the historic buildings. The second way that it's economically beneficial is the jobs that it produces. The National Trust for Historic Preservation says that the residential rehabilitation creates 50% more jobs than new construction, and people also have attachment to these buildings. So across the country, people who are fixing these buildings and have the skilled craftsmanship and training to fix them get actually more jobs than those who are building new construction in residential. And then the third way is that they attract small businesses. Jane Jacobs was an urban activist who wrote a book called The Death and Life of Great American Cities in 1961. She argues that up-and-coming entrepreneurs prefer places that have a history because they're more cheap and they're more flexible and they give a sense of place. If any of you guys have seen The Intern with Anne Hathaway, she actually does this. She has an old factory, the telephone book factory, and that's where she starts her business. So that's just a movie example of what it is. So these reasons, community and its character, cultural and environmental sustainability, and economic development show why historic buildings should not be demolished and replaced, but should be preserved and reused. Every person is a part of some community, and everyone interacts with the environment around them. Older buildings provide the history, character, and sense of place that we all crave, what makes a home, and what reminds us of who we are and where we've come from. So if you're okay with letting all of these treasures be crushed, by all means stand by. But if you love history and memory of place and beautiful places, join your community to join our heritage. And this is my audience.